Hi, my name is Christine Cole. I'm 32, a financial analyst in Boise, Idaho. Thanksgiving was supposed to feel warm, familiar, safe. Instead, my parents handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a bank notice for my brother's $250,000 debt. Dad's eyes hardened. "You'll cover this," he said like it was law. I said no. Red wine hit my face, cold and stinging. Mom's voice was ice. "Get out!" I stared at people who called me daughter. Have you ever learned your worth in one violent second? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done? That night, I wasn't family. I was their checkbook. I wake early in Boise, chasing silence before the day begins. My apartment is small, but mine, hardwood floors and city lights. I built this space with long nights, skipped vacations, and relentless discipline. People call me responsible like it's praise, but it always stings. Growing up, that word was a weight, not a gift. My brother got spotlights, trophies, excuses tailored to his failures. I got silence, report cards, and the burden of fixing things. At 14, I learned saving wasn't safety. It was their expectation. "Christine will handle it," they'd say, and my chest caved in. Holidays were hugs that lasted 1 second too short. Praise sounded like paperwork, practical, useful, never adored. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I mapped trails in Sawtooth. I wanted pine air, fire smoke, and stars cutting the dark. Then Mom's text arrived. "Come home, we miss you." My chest tightened, memory fighting suspicion. Sarah, my closest friend, warned me softly. "They only call when they want something. Don't fall for it." I laughed it off, but her words left bruises inside. Still, I craved the kitchen light and apple pie. I wanted Dad's corny jokes, the ones that made me groan. I wanted Mom to see me, not my bank account. Hope is a trap when history wears a smile. Still, I wrapped wine for Dad and a scarf for Mom. I chose a sweater that felt like me, not perfection. On the drive to Idaho Falls, I practiced forgiveness. I rehearsed small talk and swallowed the old hurts whole. The house smelled like childhood, and I let myself believe. But their questions circled jobs, promotions, and savings. Not love, not me, just numbers to exploit. I should have trusted my doubts instead of their bright smiles. I pulled into Idaho Falls under a sky of brittle gray. The driveway looked the same, but my pulse ran uneven. I carried wine, a scarf, a book bridging years of silence. Dad's hug was tight, louder than I remembered, almost theatrical. Mom's smile stretched too wide. Her voice rehearsed, guiding me inside. The house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon, perfectly staged nostalgia. My brother grinned by the fireplace, arm draped around his wife. "Hey sis," he said like old times we never had. Her smile was polite. Her eyes weighed me like numbers. I handed out gifts. Thanks returned, hollow, perfectly on script. The table gleamed. Golden turkey, mashed potatoes, almonds on green beans. I used to love this spread. The clatter, Dad's jokes. For a moment, I let the memory reach for me. But unease threaded the air like smoke under a door. Mom leaned too close, asking about my job and savings. Casual tone, deliberate blade. I felt the pressure points. "You're doing so well," she said, eyes avoiding mine. Dad nodded too quickly. Like waiting for a cue, I steered to harmless ground. Boise restaurants, weekend hikes, new trails. They dragged it back. Promotions, retirement plans, investment strategy, liquidity. My brother bragged about his real estate project. A game changer. His grin was wide. His eyes twitched, selling to himself. My sister-in-law chimed in. Praise sugared with calculation, not affection. "You must have a nice nest egg by now," she said. The words were soft. The math behind them was sharp. I forced a laugh. My stomach tightened with every glance. Sarah's warning whispered, "They call when they need you." I wanted to argue with her voice in my head. Instead, I counted forks and knives, avoiding their eyes. The fireplace glowed, but the room felt windowless and cold. Whatever this was, it wasn't family. It was preparation. Grandpa sat near the window, quiet, hands folded over cane. He watched small things. Who reached first? Who avoided questions longest? When Dad laughed too hard, Grandpa's eyebrows tugged together. When Mom praised me, his gaze dropped to her knuckles. He caught me looking. His eyes flashed a careful warning. Not fear exactly, more like don't ignore the pattern again. I sipped water, tasting metal, counting heartbeats between questions. My brother's voice rose when money circled back to me. My sister-in-law's smile held, but her jaw set harder. I measured exits without meaning to. The hall, the porch. Hope kept knocking. Memory kept deadbolting the door. The turkey cooled while their plans warmed around me. I felt like inventory, not kin, waiting to be tallied. The room applauded my discipline, not my existence or peace. Applause sounds different when it's tied to your balance. I set my napkin down and finally named it bait. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't Thanksgiving. It was me on the menu. After dinner, we moved to the living room for gifts. The fireplace popped softly. The air felt rehearsed and dense. Mom handed me a small velvet box with careful hands. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Dad's jaw worked silently. I expected something simple, maybe a locket, something safe. Inside lay a folded paper, edges crisp, lettering official. A bank notice. My brother owed $250,000, past due. What is this? I asked, my voice smaller than usual. Dad leaned forward. Your brother's debt. You'll cover it, he said. Not a question. Not a plea. A decision already made. I looked at my brother. His grin had turned to concrete. My sister-in-law held his arm, face blank, shoulders rigid. Why me? I asked, fingers steadying the paper in place. Mom softened her voice, the way she does before a push. You're doing so well. This is what families do, sweetheart. I can't fix this, I said, tasting metal in my mouth. My sister-in-law's eyes flicked bright, then cooled like glass. I work at the bank, she said, tone almost bored. I saw your savings, $700,000. You can afford it. The words knocked the legs out from under me. She'd reached into my privacy like opening a cabinet. Years of budgets and sacrifices, weaponized against me. I folded the notice and set it on my lap. This is his debt, I said. It isn't mine to carry. My brother's voice sharpened. Come on, sis, it's just money. It's family, Mom added, the words snapping like a trap. You've got the means, Dad said. What kind of daughter refuses? The question wasn't a question. It was a verdict. I'm not paying, I said. Each word clicked like a lock. Dad rose, his chair scraped like a blade across tile. He gripped a red glass. The stem squealed in his hand. You ungrateful child, he hissed, eyes burning. Wine flashed, cold and sticky across my face and neck. Gasps snapped. My blouse bled red under the lamplight. Mom stood. If you won't help your brother, leave, she said. The sentence fell clean, surgical, rehearsed in another room. I wiped my face, sleeves shaking, heart pounding against ribs. I looked at each of them and met nobody there. I won't be your solution, I said, reaching for my coat. My brother half rose, then shrank under the silence. My sister-in-law's mouth pinched. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Grandpa watched from the corner, gaze steady, something coiled. I stepped toward the door. The fireplace cracked behind me. Cinnamon turned to smoke in my throat. Outside, the night held its breath as the door shut. I thought the worst was over, until the truth forced its way out. The living room sagged under silence after I walked out. Grandpa rose slowly, palm on his cane, eyes sharp as frost. Dad stared into the fireplace like it might swallow his shame. Mom's hands trembled, then smoothed flat, rehearsing another version of care. My brother's jaw worked, his charm stripped bare. My sister-in-law crossed her arms, chin high, banker with secrets. I've had enough, Grandpa said, voice low, steady, unforgiving. You threw wine at your daughter to cover a liar's mess. His cane tapped once, a gavel on the hardwood floor. That debt isn't a startup, he continued. It's casinos, cars, trips. He lifted statements from the family account, pages rattling like evidence. Withdrawals to Nevada, a BMW, flights to Paris, $250. He turned to Dad. And you helped hide it. You pressured her. Dad's mouth opened, then shut, words grinding to dust. Mom whispered, please. But it wasn't for truth, only for silence. Grandpa faced my brother, eyes burning with years of disappointment. You aimed Christine like a tool at your debt. You let her carry it. My sister-in-law stiffened. I was protecting family. No, he snapped. You were counting someone else's money. Then he dialed my number, hands steady. Halfway to Boise, my phone hummed on the console. I pulled over and answered, breath uneven. Christine, he said softer. You deserve truth, not their play. Casinos, the car, the Paris flights, he laid them bare. He'd overheard the kitchen script, seen the withdrawals timed with Mom's smiles. I'm sorry I stayed quiet too long, he said. The apology cut deeper than Dad's whine ever could. It was the first adult choosing me over convenience. Thank you, I whispered. I won't be their solution anymore. Back in that room, Grandpa's voice stayed iron. You will apologize, he told Dad. You will fix this. You will leave Christine out of your schemes forever. Silence answered, thick with guilt and shrinking pride. My brother tried. We're family. Grandpa's reply slammed down. Then act like it. By morning, Aunt Martha and Uncle Stephen called. They'd heard the truth. Their voices carried steady support. No gossip, no pity, just a line I could stand on. In Idaho Falls, whispers spread where reputations once lived. At the bank, trust cooled around my sister-in-law's smile. At church, Dad's handshake dangled unanswered in the hall. Mom's book club met without her, one chair empty. I changed my passcodes, opened a new account in Boise. I saved Grandpa's statements and call logs. I chose silence over spectacle, boundaries over their theater. Their power ended where my line began, and I carved it deep. Boise steadied me in ways I didn't expect. Morning runs reset my lungs and quieted the noise. Work felt clean again, numbers that didn't lie or bleed. My apartment held light differently, like it belonged to me. I changed passcodes, opened a new account, locked every door. Not out of fear, out of respect for my future. Grandpa called every few weeks, never pressing, always present. We talked weather, tomatoes, and sometimes the hard parts. He didn't excuse them. He didn't rewrite the night. He just said, "I'm proud of you for choosing yourself." Those words patched something the wine couldn't tear. Aunt Martha texted photos from Sunday dinners. Paper plates, warm faces. "Whenever you're ready," she wrote, "we'll set a chair." I wasn't ready, but it mattered the chair existed. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a door they walk through. It's a fence I build, with a gate I control. Mom sent one message, "We miss you." No apology, no ownership, just a tug at old strings. I didn't answer. Silence can be a boundary too. Dad never wrote. My brother posted quotes about resilience. The town moved on, but slower for them. On cold nights, I think of that velvet box. How love pretended to be duty and arrived with debt. How I mistook interrogation for care and planning for warmth. I can love my family and still refuse their traps. Both things can be true, and I choose the second. If you're facing pressure wrapped in pretty words, breathe. Ask who benefits when you break yourself to say yes. You're not cruel for closing a door that keeps you safe. Have you ever set a boundary they called betrayal? Tell me your story. I'm listening, and so are others. Walking away wasn't punishment. It was the first honest love, my own. Before saying goodbye, if this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.
I had made her favorite poached salmon with lemon butter, roasted carrots, and a peach tart from scratch. I even found the old floral linen she liked, the one with the frayed edges she used to scold me about but secretly adored. It was Vera's 64th birthday, and I told myself this year might be different. Not better, maybe, but quieter. The table was set for 6. Vera at the head, flanked by her bridge partner June, our cousin Lori, and 2 neighbors who had known me since I was a teenager. I poured the wine, offered smiles past dishes. It was almost easy to pretend this was love. Then Vera raised her glass. To aging without baggage, she said, smirking as she swirled the wine. And to finally having a life free of dead weight. She looked directly at me. Honestly, Marin, the best gift you could give me is to leave my life. No one spoke. June coughed softly. Lori's fork paused mid-air. I stared at Vera, blinking once, then twice. I didn't ask for clarification. I didn't want to hear it again. I stood slowly, excused myself with a smile that wasn't mine, and walked to the kitchen. I rinsed my hands under cool water until they numbed. Then I took my coat from the hook and left without saying goodbye. That night I sat in the dim kitchen, still in my coat. The tart was untouched on the counter. The sink held empty glasses, wine-stained and half-rinsed. I looked at the chair where she had sat back straight, eyes smug, and wondered how long she had been rehearsing that sentence. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe it was instinct. I thought of all the birthdays before this, the ones I spent making hand-sewn gifts as a child, the years I decorated her front porch with candles, the decades of trying to earn something she never planned to give. I got up, placed the tart in the fridge, and stared at the dishes. I didn't clean them. I went to bed with the taste of silence in my mouth and her words ringing in my ears. The next morning, I opened my journal to a blank page. The page stayed blank for a long time. I held the pen but didn't write. My hand hovered over the paper like it was waiting for permission. And in the stillness of that morning, the memories came uninvited. I was 26 when I dropped out of grad school. Vera had slipped on the ice outside her porch and fractured her hip. "You're all I have," she said over the phone, her voice thin and manipulative. I remember the way the professor's face fell when I told him I wouldn't be finishing the semester. "Just take a leave," he said gently. I nodded, but I never went back. I moved back into the house that week. It was supposed to be temporary. Years passed in increments, appointments, medication, groceries, errands. I took a job at a local library, flexible hours close to home. I dated quietly, but never seriously. Every time someone asked about a future mine, I found a way to change the subject. When Vera asked if she could freshen up the house, I agreed. She painted over the yellow hallway I loved and replaced the kitchen tiles with cold gray squares. "It's more modern," she said. I convinced myself it didn't matter. It was still home even if it didn't look like mine. I let her throw out the chair I bought during my first job. I laughed it off when she called it tacky. I said yes to every little no. That was our rhythm, she asked. I adjusted. But now in the quiet of this morning, it felt different. The pattern wasn't devotion. It was disappearance. A slow unraveling strand by strand until I couldn't tell where I ended and her expectations began. I lowered the pen and finally wrote something. I gave up so much trying not to make her feel alone. But I never asked if I was allowed to want more than surviving her. The ink bled into the page. I tore it out, folded it carefully, and tucked it in the back of the journal. Then I pulled open the filing drawer and began looking for my bank statements. I didn't sleep that night. My mind paced even when my body didn't move. I kept replaying all the moments I should have said something, drawn a line, made a choice that centered me instead of her. But I hadn't. I had waited for the situation to become unbearable before I dared to name it. In the morning, I made tea but didn't drink it. I sat at the kitchen table, opened a new journal, and wrote the sentence as if it had been waiting years to exist. I have been edited out of my own life. The words landed harder on paper than they did in my chest. I read them twice, then underlined them once. Then I began. I made a list of everything Vera had access to, joint accounts, the house deed, my passwords scribbled on that kitchen notepad she always pretended not to notice. I circled the things that needed to change first. Next, I gathered all the paperwork I could find, insurance forms, bank statements, the will I had signed without reading years ago. I called the bank and scheduled an appointment to remove her as an authorized user. I searched for legal referrals and found a small law office 2 towns over. The lawyer's name was Tomas Reyes. I liked the sound of it, firm, not flashy. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not Lori, not my neighbor, certainly not Vera. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger. It was air after holding my breath for over a decade. That afternoon, I stood in the hallway and looked around the house, not with sentiment, but with precision. What was mine? What had been given and what had been taken without consent? My eyes landed on the old maple desk near the window. It was the last thing my father had touched before he died. I opened the drawer and pulled out the small envelope where he used to keep emergency cash. It was empty. The next day, I drove to meet the lawyer. Vera noticed. Not right away, but soon enough. I stopped reminding her about appointments. I no longer filled in the silences with polite conversation. I cooked only for myself using the small pan instead of the big one we used to share. She began hovering again, offering half-sincere smiles, commenting on my clothes like she was trying to sound maternal. One morning, she tapped on my door with a tray of burnt toast and oversteeped tea. "I figured you'd be tired," she said gently. "We haven't talked much since, well, you know." She waved a hand vaguely, pretending not to remember the words she had etched into the center of my chest. "You mean your birthday?" I asked. She blinked. Oh, come on, Marin. It was a joke. I was tipsy. People say things. I nodded but didn't let her in. Later that week, I sat across from a bank manager as she pulled up my account history. I watched her face change with each line she scrolled through. "Someone's been transferring funds regularly to another checking account," she said. "They're small amounts but consistent. Over 6,000 this past year." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I already knew. That evening, I found Vera folding towels in the laundry room. She looked up with that tired expression she wore like armor. "I saw the withdrawals," I said. She straightened. What are you talking about? My account. Thousands. Taken without asking. Vera sighed and dropped a towel into the basket. You're overreacting. It was for things we needed repairs prescriptions, your car maintenance. You never asked. You wouldn't have minded, she snapped. You always said we're in this together. God, Marin, you're being so selfish. I stared at her. Selfish, I repeated. Yes, she said, her voice rising. You act like you're owed something just for living here. I didn't reply. I walked past her up the stairs and into my room. I locked the door behind me not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to explain the boundary out loud. The next morning, I found a letter in the mailbox without a return address. The envelope was plain, the paper thick, folded neatly in thirds. There was no return address, but I recognized the handwriting before I opened it, neat, slightly slanted, written with care. Mrs. Darnell lived 2 doors down. We'd spoken maybe a dozen times in 15 years. She always waved from her porch, but never lingered. Dear Marin, I hope you don't mind the letter. I don't want to intrude, but I've watched from my window for a long time. Not to be nosy, just to bear witness. I've seen what you've carried, what you've given, the way you disappear to make others more comfortable. You are not invisible, Marin, and you are not wrong. With quiet admiration, Elaine Darnell, I read it twice, then once more, just to feel the words again. My eyes stung not from pain, but from the foreign comfort of being seen without having to explain myself. I folded the letter along its original crease and slipped it into the back pocket of my journal next to the torn page I had written after the birthday. It didn't fix anything, but it steadied something in me that had been wobbling for years. That evening I made dinner just for myself and didn't offer to share. Vera didn't ask. When the dishes were done, I opened my laptop and searched for a notary near the county clerk's office. I had already called Tomas Reyes. The next step would be signing the documents. I checked the locks before I went to bed, then placed the journal on the nightstand where I could see it. The next morning, I dressed in quiet clothes and drove to the attorney's office. Tomas was calm, measured, and precise. His office smelled faintly of cedar, and the walls were lined with certificates I didn't need to read. I trusted him the moment he said, "You don't need a war. You need a boundary that holds." We spent the better part of an hour signing papers. He walked me through every step, freezing joint accounts, updating the deed, revising my will. At the end, he slid the final form toward me. I hesitated only briefly before signing. Outside, the wind had picked up. By the time I got home, the first drops of rain had started. Vera was in the kitchen. She looked up from her crossword. "Where have you been out?" Her eyes narrowed. "You've been distant lately, and secretive. I don't like it." I said nothing. I went upstairs. That night the storm came, not from the sky, but through the phone. It started with a voicemail from Cousin Rachel. "What's going on over there?" "Your mom called, said you're freezing her out. That's cruel, Marin." Then came the texts from old neighbors. The passive-aggressive ones just checking in heard some worrying things. And then Lori, who didn't bother sugarcoating it. "I can't believe you'd do this to her. After everything she's done for you." I turned my phone face down and let it buzz itself into silence. Downstairs, doors slammed harder than they needed to. Cabinet drawers opened and shut with sharp intent. Vera moved through the house with heavy footsteps as if sound alone could carry her blame up the stairs. I stayed in my room and wrote it all down. I am not punishing her. I am reclaiming what is mine. The next morning, Vera banged on my door. "You've made your point," she snapped. "Now undo it." I opened the door just enough to speak. "It's not a game, Vera. There's nothing to undo." She stared at me incredulous. "You'll regret this." Maybe I said, but at least this regret will be mine. I shut the door and locked it. 2 days later, a notice was delivered to the house official, notarized and irreversible. By the end of the week, Vera was gone. She didn't say goodbye. I heard her dragging luggage across the hardwood floor just after dawn. Her voice, sharp and muttering, carried through the walls as she called someone to pick her up. A car idled out front for 10 minutes. Then the door slammed and I heard nothing else. I waited an hour before coming downstairs. The living room was still. A few picture frames were missing, some drawers left open, but the bones of the house had stayed. My house. My name on the deed, now uncontested. The quiet pressed in, but this time it didn't feel like accusation. It felt like breath, like space. I started slowly. The painting of the wildflowers I'd tucked away 5 years ago, I hung it back above the fireplace. I changed the bulbs in the hallway to warm light. I brought my grandmother's quilt down from the attic and spread it over the couch, the blue and green stitching still soft under my palms. I opened every window in the house. Let the air move through each room until it carried her scent away. Later that evening, I found an old tea tin at the back of the cupboard, the one I used to keep tucked in my nightstand drawer before Vera declared it clutter. I brewed a cup and drank it on the back porch legs tucked under me, the sun slipping behind the trees. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Not then. Instead, I sat with a calm so quiet I almost didn't recognize it. Not relief. Not victory. Something else. Something like return. That night, I slept with the bedroom door open. The next morning, I registered for an art class at the community center. The room smelled faintly of pencil shavings and turpentine, warm, lived in without expectation. No one asked me why I was there. No one asked my last name. I found a seat near the back, opened my sketchbook, and waited. The instructor, a woman named Callie with silver-streaked curls and paint on her sleeves, welcomed everyone without fanfare. "We're not here to be good," she said. "We're here to begin." I hadn't drawn since I was 22. Not really. Not since I left school and tucked that part of myself away like a luxury I couldn't afford. The first few lines were hesitant, my hand stiff and unfamiliar with movement that once felt instinctive. But by the second class, something shifted. I wasn't drawing to be seen. I was drawing because it felt like breathing again. No one in the room knew about Vera. No one knew about the bank accounts or the slammed doors or the birthday toast that had cracked something open. They only knew the way I shaded light, the way I smudged with the side of my thumb, the way I laughed softly surprised when someone told a joke under their breath. It was enough. Each week, I came home with charcoal under my nails and a sense of stillness I didn't try to explain. I began rearranging the house one corner at a time. I painted the guest bathroom a pale sage. I moved the reading lamp to the other side of the couch. I filled frames with my own sketches, quiet portraits of hands, trees, and once a single daisy. One afternoon, I found myself humming while cooking. It startled me. I hadn't made noise just to fill space in years. That evening, I sat by the window with my journal and wrote one sentence: "I'm not building a new life. I'm remembering the one I left behind." And then the phone rang. It was her voice. Hollowed out, but unmistakable. "Marin," she said barely above a whisper. "It's me." I didn't say anything. The phone sat warm in my hand, balanced between memory and instinct. "I'm not well," she continued. "The doctors found something, and I thought you should know." I let the silence stretch. She sighed. "The kids ask about you. They miss you. We all do." It was the word "we" that struck hardest. I could picture her saying it, her hand on her chest, like it justified everything that came before. "I'm sorry," she added softer now. "I said things I didn't mean. But this house doesn't feel right without you. None of it does." I looked out the window where the daisy sketch now hung in the corner of the glass. The light hit it differently every hour. It had become a kind of clock for me, marking time by how it changed. "I'm glad the kids are well," I said, "and I hope you're getting the care you need." She paused. "So, can we talk? Maybe come by, just to see you?" I closed my eyes. "I can't go back to being small so you can feel big," I said quietly. She exhaled sharply, wounded or angry, I couldn't tell which. "So that's it. That's it." She hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat there breathing. The quiet didn't feel like punishment anymore. The next morning, I stepped out into the garden with a trowel in one hand and a packet of seeds in the other. The soil was dry but soft, the kind that welcomed change. I pressed the lavender seedlings into the earth, gently spacing them with care, then followed with sage along the back edge of the fence. I didn't rush. Each handful of dirt felt like a promise. When I stood to stretch my back, the sun was low and warm across the porch. A breeze moved through the branches, and for the first time in years, I could hear the world without a filter of tension. I stayed out there until the light shifted to gold. Then came the knock. 2 girls stood at my front steps, maybe 7 or 8, their faces open and curious. One held a basket lined with a kitchen towel. "Hi," the taller one said. "These are from my mom." The younger nudged her and added, "She says your garden makes her feel brave." I blinked, caught off guard. "Well, that's very kind," I said, crouching to their level. "Tell her I said thank you." They smiled and ran off before I could say more, their laughter trailing behind them like ribbon. I carried the basket inside and set it on the kitchen table. Still warm, the muffin smelled like cinnamon and apple. I didn't eat one right away. I just stood there, letting the quiet stretch wide around me. Later, I lit a candle in the living room and opened my journal. "I thought disappearing would break me," I wrote, "but maybe I was never meant to be seen by them. Maybe I was meant to see myself." The candle flickered, casting a soft halo of light over the pages, and then I turned to a fresh sheet and began to draw. The message blinked on my screen just after 10:00 a.m., wedged between a supplier update and a catering license renewal. I almost deleted it without listening, just another logistics check-in, I thought. But then I saw the name Yvette Morrow. I tapped play. "Hi, Ms. Caldwin. This is Yvette from Morrow & Kober's events. I'm calling on behalf of the Langston Caldwin wedding. I wanted to inform you that per request from the couple and their families, your name has been removed from the guest list. There was mention of a family dispute. I was also instructed to confirm that the $60,000 deposit you made earlier this year will be retained, as those funds have already been allocated across non-refundable services." Silence filled the room after the message ended. I didn't move. Outside my office window, Portland stretched in cool grays and autumn gold. The glass reflected my own face back at me, sharp, still unreadable. Behind me, assistants buzzed through morning calls. The pastry chef had sent over a sample menu. I was supposed to review lighting specs for our Charleston property by noon, but all I could hear was her voice. "Your name has been removed. They will keep the deposit." I'd wired the money 6 months ago after Delia called in a panic about budget gaps and catering costs. She never asked for help directly, not in words. She'd always had our parents to lean on, always had the comfort of being understood. I paid because I didn't want her to carry the weight alone, and because I thought, maybe this time it would mean something. Apparently it had, just not in the way I imagined. My phone rang again, same number. I let it go to voicemail. This time I didn't need to listen. I already knew what she was calling about. I turned back to my desk, eyes steady, voice even. "Get Yvette on the line. I'll take the call now." Yvette's voice came through before I could finish my greeting. "Ms. Caldwin, I'm so sorry to reach out like this again. I wasn't sure if the message earlier was clear or if maybe it reached you in error, but cancel the wedding," I said. There was a pause, then a breathless rush. "I'm sorry what you heard me. Cancel the Langston Caldwin wedding, effective immediately." "But, Ms. Caldwin, you're not the bride. You're not even a member of the planning team, Yvette." I softened my tone. "Please open your vendor dashboard." I could hear her clicking through. I imagined the flicker of confusion across her face as she opened the Morrow & Coder backend and saw what I already knew she would. "See the ownership field on your management panel?" I asked. "Sterling Hawthorne Events, LLC, she said hesitantly. "That's me." Another silence. "Now check the venue, Ravenshade House." "That's us, but..." "Oh," her voice dropped. "Owned by Caldwin Properties, Catering Seraph Table Co." "That's... oh." "Hotel bookings under Calder Haven Residences, transportation through Emberline chauffeurs, floral contract from Blue Vein Gardens, all subsidiaries, all mine." I didn't realize. No one does. That's the thing. The line went quiet again. I could hear her breathing, measured, stunned. Probably scanning the connections, cross-referencing files, maybe even checking our investor registry. It was all there. Every decision Delia and our parents had made had been funded, booked, and managed under my umbrella. And they never bothered to look up. "Cancel everything," I repeated gently. notify the vendors, revoke reservations, issue standard guest accommodation refunds where applicable. Ms. Caldwin, I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say. Just follow procedure. I'll handle the contracts on our end. She hesitated one more beat. They're going to call you. I almost smiled. They're already too late. I ended the call and opened the second drawer of my desk. The check stub was still there, Delia's name in the memo. I slid it into the shredder and picked up my phone to prepare the vendor notifications. I was 22 when I dropped out of Cornell. It wasn't dramatic. No yelling match, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet decision and a long walk home from campus with a business plan in my back pocket and no one to tell. Maris called it a pause. Dorian called it a rebellion. Delia didn't say much at all, just blinked, then shifted the conversation back to her LSAT prep. I rented a converted garage off Burnside Avenue with no insulation one outlet and a folding table I used as a desk. I slept next to racks of glassware and floral samples. I cold emailed corporate teams, pitched wedding services to strangers at hotel lobbies, and made deliveries in my own car. I learned to survive on caffeine instinct and the belief that I wasn't crazy for wanting something different. Delia graduated on time, top 10%. She framed every acceptance letter and texted me photos of her graduation robes. Our parents called her focused. I was figuring things out. By the time I booked my first full-service event, I had built my own CRM bartered accounting software in exchange for venue space and memorized every line of the Oregon event permit code. When I bought my first hotel, a rundown boutique property with bad carpets and worse plumbing, I told them over dinner. Dorian smiled politely. It's good to have something that keeps you busy. I wanted to tell them it wasn't a hobby. I wanted them to ask what I was building, how I was funding it, what I saw 5 years ahead. But they didn't. They passed the potatoes, asked about Delia's clerkship, and let the moment dissolve, so I learned not to tell them anything at all. I just kept building. And now they were planning a wedding inside walls I'd poured every inch of myself into, never realizing they were standing inside the very thing they had dismissed. I sent the final cancellation confirmation and turned my attention to the accounts team as the first call from my father came through. The phone vibrated on my desk again, same number as before. This time I answered. Lyra. My father said, his voice more strained than I'd ever heard it. There's been some kind of mistake. Delia just called us in tears. She said the venue canceled, the caterer too, even the cars. What's going on? I let the silence stretch for a moment. There's no mistake, I said evenly. The wedding is canceled. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I don't understand, he said, but I could hear it in his tone he did. He just didn't like the answer forming in his head. You asked Morrow & Co. to remove me from the guest list. You told them there was a family disagreement. Then you told them to keep the $60,000 deposit I paid 6 months ago. You planned a celebration in a house I built and thought I wouldn't notice when you locked the door behind me. Lyra, no one meant to. You uninvited me from the wedding I paid for. I said each word precise. So now you're uninvited from everything I own. He fell silent. I'm not doing this out of spite, I added. I'm doing it because you drew a line. I'm simply making it visible. We didn't know you paid for it, he said finally, as if that excused it. Delia said a friend helped. We didn't realize, because you didn't ask. He exhaled. Look, it's a wedding. Things are emotional. Maybe we didn't handle this right, but surely you don't want to ruin your sister's big day over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Dad. It's a habit. One you've all had for years. There was a long pause, the kind that makes time feel thicker. I thought you were still figuring things out, he said quietly. I was. While you were watching Delia walk across a stage, I was signing deeds. While you were praising her promotions, I was negotiating full state hospitality contracts. I've never asked for applause, but I won't keep funding a narrative where I don't exist. Another breath. Then what happens now? Now I said you figure out how to host a wedding without me. I hung up and opened my inbox. Yvette had written again. This time she wasn't asking for permission. She was asking for options. By noon, my assistant had fielded 6 calls from confused guests. 2 florists requested contract clarification, and my hotel GM in Ashland texted, "Is the Langston Caldwin block still valid? Bride's mom is panicking." I didn't reply. The panic wasn't mine to hold. The emails came next, polite at first, then desperate. One from the officiant, one from the photographer, a spreadsheet from the wedding concierge team marked urgent. By the time Yvette called again, I was already expecting it. "Ms. Caldwin Lyra, please. I'm sorry to keep bothering you, but I'm getting calls from everyone. Guests, parents, vendors. There's so much confusion." "There's no confusion," I said calmly. "The wedding's canceled. I understand. But is there a compromise? A scaled-down version? Something salvageable? I've never seen a wedding unravel this fast." "They didn't know. They didn't care." I interrupted, then softened. "Look, I'm not here to punish anyone. But I also don't work on sentiment anymore. Not with them." She hesitated. "So, no version is possible." I leaned back in my chair. I knew exactly what they were hoping for: a miracle. A reinstated package, maybe a discount for the misunderstanding, some gesture that would let them pretend none of this had happened. "Here's what I'll offer," I said. "They can have the wedding at Briarfield, one of our smaller properties. The gardens are lovely. Reception space fits 80 max. Basic catering package. House florals. Staff photographer only. No substitutions, no upgrades." There was silence on her end. "Total cost $200,000, I continued. Paid up front, non-refundable. That's 4 times what they were paying before. And a fraction of what it takes to earn back trust," I said. "This is business now, Yvette. No discounts, no exceptions." She didn't argue. "I'll draft a revised contract," I said. "It expires in 48 hours. After that, they'll need to start from scratch with vendors who don't already know what happened." When I ended the call, I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. I opened the contract file and edited the venue name, service, tiers, pricing. No fanfare. Just a clean slate with stricter terms. Then I saw Delia's name flash across my phone. I let it ring. Then I picked up. "Lyra." Her voice was soft, almost unsure, like she didn't know if I'd answer or stay on the line. "I'm here," I said. A pause stretched between us. "I didn't know it was you," she said quietly. "The deposit, the planning. I thought it was some silent investor Mom found. She just said we had a sponsor." I said nothing. "I should have asked," she added. "I should have known. The way things moved so easily, the upgrades we couldn't afford deep down, I think I knew it was someone who cared more than they let on. And yet," I said calmly, "you let them uninvite me." Her breath caught. "I let Mom decide who mattered. I thought it would be easier to go along with it. You weren't close with Reed, and you hadn't been around." "I hadn't been asked," I corrected. "There's a difference." "I know." She was crying now, not dramatically, but the kind of quiet unraveling you hear only when someone realizes they'd been comfortably wrong. "For a long time." "I didn't speak up," she said. "And I'm not calling now to fix it. I know I can't fix it. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." "You didn't ask where the money came from because it didn't occur to you that it could have been me," I said. "That's the part that stays with me, Delia. Not the money, the erasure." "I think I just believed what everyone else believed," she whispered. "That you'd chosen distance. That you didn't care." I wanted to say I did care in ways that didn't look like theirs. That I watched from the edges because that's where they kept me. But I didn't say it. I just let the silence hold. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "What happens now, I sent an offer," I said. "Through Yvette. You can take it or leave it. Can we talk again? After you've had time?" "You're talking to me now." There was another silence, heavier this time. "Okay," she said. I ended the call before her voice could crack again. Then I turned to my inbox and saw the vendor contract had been opened and downloaded. Delia called again that evening. This time she didn't cry. "We're moving forward with the new venue," she said. "Mom signed the contract. Reed's parents are confused, but trying to stay out of it." I waited. "We're grateful," she added. "Really, I know this whole thing shouldn't have happened, and I know I have no right to ask, but..." Would you consider coming to the wedding? I exhaled slowly. Only under 3 conditions. Okay, she said, already bracing. What are they? 1, I want a formal apology. Not a text, not a mumbled sorry at the buffet line. A real apology. For the decision, for the erasure. From all of us, she asked. From everyone who took part in it, I said. You, Mom, Dad, Reed if he had a say. You decide who that includes. She was quiet, but she didn't object. 2. I continued. I want acknowledgement. Not just that what happened was hurtful, but that it was based on a version of me you all chose to believe. The one who never made it, never mattered, never stayed. I understand, she said. And 3, I said, I want the invitation restored. Not out of guilt, not because you feel obligated. I want to be there because you want me there. Not because you need the help. Not because it would look bad to leave me out. I won't stand in that room unless I know it's real. Delia didn't answer right away. That's fair, she said at last. More than fair. I think I need to talk to Mom and Dad. You should, I said. Would you be willing to meet? She asked. In person. Not for the wedding before. That depends on them. I'll reach out again soon, she promised. Thank you for at least picking up. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my screen for a long time after that, then turned off the office lights and stepped out onto the balcony as the city lit up beneath me. I reserved the West dining room at Halebridge Manor, one of my first successful restorations. They'd walked past the name on glossy brochures and highway signage without knowing it belonged to me. I arrived early. The room was set with hand-cut glassware and oak-paneled walls that caught the early light just right. No one had ever asked me what I'd built these past 12 years. They would see it now. At 2:05 they arrived. Delia first, then our parents. Reed trailed behind, hands in his pockets. They paused at the entrance eyes, adjusting to a world they never thought I inhabited. Lyra Maris said, forcing a smile too wide. This place is stunning. I nodded toward the table. Have a seat. No one touched the menus. Dorian cleared his throat. We came because we owe you an apology. A real one. I said nothing. He looked down, then up again. We misjudged you, Lyra. For a long time. We told ourselves you'd walked away, that you'd made choices we couldn't understand. But really, we just never bothered to understand. Maris picked at the corner of her napkin. I didn't know you'd built all this. I thought you were keeping busy. I didn't realize you were becoming this. Delia spoke next. I'm sorry for not defending you, for letting other people speak for me, for assuming you'd never show up even when you were the one who made everything possible. I kept my eyes on them. I didn't reach across the table. I didn't soften. I didn't want an apology because I need to hear nice words, I said. I wanted it because I needed to know you finally saw me, not as the dropout, not as the disappointment, as the woman who built the house you stood in. Reed leaned forward. We're sorry. And if there's a way to move forward, we'd like to. I studied them for a moment longer, then reached for the water pitcher and poured myself a glass. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was earned. Delia placed a hand on the table. Would you consider standing with us at the wedding? She asked. I looked at her. This time, I didn't say no. Delia waited until our parents had left the dining room. Reed stepped outside to take a call, giving her space she didn't ask for but needed. She stayed seated, fingers curled around the rim of her glass gaze, steady but unsure. I meant what I said earlier, she began. I don't want you at the wedding because it would look bad without you. I want you there because I finally get what it means to have a sister like you. I didn't respond right away. I've spent most of my life comparing us without realizing how unfair the scale was. She continued. I let other people tell me what success looked like. You were never missing. I was just never looking in the right direction. There was no flattery in her tone, just quiet truth. I don't want you as a guest, she said. I want you beside me. Will you stand with me not as the person who funded this, but as my sister? I studied her for a moment. This doesn't erase anything I said. She nodded. I know. It doesn't undo the years. I don't want it to, she said. I just want to stop pretending they didn't happen. I reached for my glass, raised it slightly. Then we start here, I said. And we build forward. The corner of her mouth lifted. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were speaking from the same page, not across some unspoken distance. I left the dining room not as the financier or the invisible daughter, but as the woman finally choosing what role she wanted to play. 2 days later, I received the official invitation in the mail. My name was listed not under special thanks, but under bridal party. The wedding unfolded exactly as I knew it would. My team moved like clockwork florals arranged with quiet elegance, soft lighting warming the edges of the garden catering staff, slipping between guests with practiced ease. Every inch of Briarfield carried my signature, even if most people still didn't know it. Delia looked beautiful. Reed looked nervous but grounded. Our parents kept glancing my way, not out of suspicion anymore, but out of some new awareness that I existed outside their assumptions. During the reception, Delia took the mic and said a few heartfelt words. Then she passed it to me. I stood in front of a crowd that once would have overlooked me. This time, they listened. I've spent most of my life being quiet, I began. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I thought silence meant peace. What I learned is silence also builds. It builds patience. It builds resilience. It builds foundations. I glanced toward Delia. Love should never be quiet, I said, but sometimes silence is what built the table. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. Applause followed soft and real. Later that night, as the last guests filtered out and the music dimmed, I stepped into the back garden and pulled out my phone. I typed one line. Dinner. Next week, Delia's reply came a minute later. Absolutely. I locked the screen and slipped the phone into my coat pocket as one of my staff approached to confirm final breakdown instructions. I nodded, gave a few directions, and watched as they moved effortlessly through a space I'd once only dreamed of owning. No one had to see it all for it to matter. I built it anyway, and I'd keep building.